I was 23 years old, and my life was full of activity, but I felt exhausted. People showed me respect because I was the CFO, making me feel older and more experienced than my age. I was in my 6th year of college, while most of my classmates had moved on to marriage and children, so I hardly ever saw them. I was also a member of the City University Vocal Quartet, but the other members were 4 or 5 years younger than me, and I had no interest in them. I had been to a few dance clubs in the past, but stopped going because there were no guys my age there. I was ready for marriage and motherhood, but I couldn't find anyone who made me happy, and it made me very depressed. My parents suggested that if we moved to Israel, it would be easier for me to find someone suitable. The prospect of a new adventure made me agree to the move. While my parents started to learn the language, I was working on my diploma project and finishing college. During this time, Natalie, the administrator of my vocal quartet, asked me to go on a trip after my diploma defense. It was a trip to perform concerts in different towns, and it was a great opportunity to have fun. I was very proud to have Natalie as a friend. Although she was older than my mother, I never noticed her age and felt she was no older than 30. She was married with a son, who was 2 years younger than me, and she wanted to be my mother-in-law in the future. I had met Natalie a couple of years before when I was taken to a university hospital. My mom was an important figure there, so the staff treated me differently from the other patients. I was given a new bed with soft linens and a blanket, whereas everyone else had used and old items. I felt embarrassed, but I was in too much pain to object. I was already in a bad mood that week because health complications prevented me from attending my diploma project meeting. Natalie didn't like the special treatment I was receiving and yelled at the nurses, demanding the same treatment for everyone. The nurses disregarded her plea and left me in the room to face all the tension. If I had been able to move, I would have risen and thrown away all those new items, yet I couldn't. The only thing I could do was lie there and watch Natalie seethe with rage. However, later on, I found out that Natalie had a different recollection of my appearance in the hospital room. It was an eerie hospital room, she said. 12 forlorn and dejected girls were already there, and the minutes seemed to stretch on forever. Then, the nurses brought in a new patient. At first, I was wary of her. She was nasty to the staff and fuming with rage at the universe for thrusting her from life into this deathly still atmosphere. Yet, I eventually got to know her. Despite being unable to move due to her pain, the moment she arrived, the atmosphere changed. The hospital room was now alive with chatter and giggles. It felt like I wasn't in a hospital room anymore, but in a joyful summer camp cabin. The time began to speed by. I found out that the girl had inflammatory polyarthritis. All of her bones were swollen, and she was in a lot of pain until the doctors prescribed her strong medications. Incredibly, as soon as the medications took effect, she sneaked out of the hospital through the window. By the time the doctors checked on her, she was back in her bed. The girl had such a positive attitude and energy that it motivated the other girls to work on their studies. Everyone began to recover quickly. I was very pleased to hear her story. While in the hospital, I entertained the girls by singing for them. Natalie then invited me to join the vocal quartet she was leading at the university, and I readily accepted. There were 16 of us in the group, singing 4-part a cappella harmony. We were incredibly successful, winning first place at citywide competitions and performing alongside professional opera singers in the city. Once, the president of the USSR, Leonid Brezhnev, visited our city. It was quite an event, and the entire entertainment world of the city was buzzing with anticipation in preparation for his arrival. A special concert was arranged, and choruses and musical bands were ordered to learn a patriotic song that would be performed at the end. This song had 3 verses, each of which was to be sung by a lead singer, and a bridge was to be sung by a chorus. Several lead singers from the city opera were eager to perform for the president, and they fought fiercely for the right to do so. It was decided that 3 leading singers would sing 1 verse each, though it was not announced until the beginning of the concert who the lucky ones were. Hence, all of them diligently worked on the same song, hoping for the best, and the tension between them grew stronger each day. On the day of the concert, I arrived at the theater 2 hours before the show was scheduled to start. To my dismay, I found that my name was on the list, but with a note that read access denied. I felt frustrated, understanding the reason why they wouldn't let me in. I am Jewish. Nevertheless, I didn't leave and waited for Natalie. "Why aren't you in a dressing room?" she asked in a concerned tone when she arrived. "They won't let me in," I replied. "What do you mean?" "That's impossible. You're the lead singer of the vocal quartet," Natalie exclaimed. She ran to the security guard and yelled at him, but it didn't help. A few minutes later, our vocal quartet director, Fina, arrived and discovered the reason for my rejection. She was Jewish as well, so she immediately understood why I was denied entry. She approached the security guard and spoke to him with a friendly smile, as if she were inviting him on a date. "Listen, you should talk to your supervisor about this girl because if she isn't allowed to enter, none of us will be allowed in. And if we don't come in, you'll have a huge problem," she said, her expression turning menacingly. The security guard was clearly flustered. He quickly shut the front door and disappeared inside the building. I really admired Fina for her many talents. She had a complex personality and was a very large woman. I had never seen anyone bigger than her. She always wore a lot of bright makeup, as if she were ready to go on stage, but at the same time she was very careless with her clothes. Fina knew numerous languages, and it seemed like she knew all the languages in the world. She was somehow able to communicate with any international student at the university without an interpreter, regardless of their country of origin. Fina had a remarkable ability to converse on any topic with anyone. Although she enjoyed being surrounded by people, she never invited them over to her house due to its chronic state of disarray. As Fina was unable to find a suitable match, she decided to have a child on her own, which was uncommon in Russia at the time. Playing the piano was like second nature to her, and she had the same level of proficiency with any other musical instrument. She was a talented songwriter and performer, though few people ever got to listen to her work. Her lyrics often contained anti-Soviet sentiments, so she always ensured that no one recorded her before performing in front of a small audience. Fina's words were chosen with great care, but when she spoke, her eyes seemed to blaze with passion and intensity. Her facial expressions alone spoke volumes. I deeply admired her for all that she was. When the security guard returned, a crowd of performers had already gathered at the door waiting to be let in. He glanced at us and gruffly said, "You can all come in." I headed to a dressing room. The grandest concert hall in the city boasted 5 levels of balconies around the mezzanine and a gigantic stage with 8 levels of risers, designed specifically for the occasion. All the choirs and musical groups from the entire city had been gathered and placed on the balconies surrounding the mezzanine and the grand stage. My vocal quartet and I were honored to be in the front row of the stage. As I stood there, I scanned the darkened mezzanine, where all the spectators were seated, searching for Brezhnev, though it was impossible to discern him in the shadows. The orchestra stalls began to play their instrumental music, and the first lead opera singer stepped up to the microphone. His voice was beautiful, but his nerves got the best of him and he stumbled on the very first verse, singing something completely different from the melody and lyrics. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of punishment he would receive after the concert. Then the chorus began to sing the bridge and I was overcome with emotion. The massive, magnificent sound of the joint choruses filled the hall and overwhelmed my senses. I felt like I was on cloud 9. I was no longer in control of myself. I had been taken over by the divine music and I could not contain my joy. The second singer began to sing the second verse, but I was so eager to experience the powerful sensation once more that I hardly paid attention to her. When the chorus began to sing again, I felt as if I were under a spell. It was like a dream come true. The choruses were all around me, and their sound was exquisite and beyond my comprehension. Finally, the third lead singer sang the last verse, and as I waited for the chorus to start singing, I was filled with anticipation. And then the blissful sound came to me like a blessing, soothing my heart and soul. I had never experienced anything like that before and I knew I never would again.
I went on tour with my vocal group once a year. However, it couldn't really be called a tour because we didn't earn any money, we just traveled from one city to another giving concerts. We stayed either in hostels or in hotels paid for by the university. We were all young, and our eyes darted to the right and left in search of some handsome guy. Finest saw this and tirelessly watched us until we were all in our beds for the night. She did not leave the hotel corridor. I think she did this not so much to protect us from temptation and trouble as out of envy because we were young and beautiful. The provincial guys looked at us with hungry eyes, and no one paid attention to Fina. However, most of the men paid attention only to one of our girls, Julia. Julia was a special girl. On her pretty face with plump cheeks, she wore glasses with thick lenses. Her lips were like a bow, and she had a small nose. Her eyesight was terrible. It's incredible, but these glasses didn't spoil her at all. Maybe she was just so nice that, regardless of the size of the glasses, men didn't notice them. In the mornings, we left our hotel rooms and sat in a bunch in the corridor waiting for our bus. Julia almost never sat with us, she sat separately, surrounded by a group of young guys. We looked at her with envy, and I constantly wondered how she managed it. The men stuck to her like bees to honey. That year, Fina got sick and couldn't go on tour with us, but according to tradition, we had to go somewhere and perform. The administrator of our musical group, Natalie, solved this issue in her own way. She divided us into small groups of 2 or 3 people, and each group was joined by an instrumental ensemble from a local enterprise. Natalie grouped Helen and me together. Helen sang the main part, and I sang the second voice. We sang together pretty quickly and just had to get acquainted with the instrumental group with which we would spend a month giving concerts. I was sure that it would be easy for me to adapt to any musical group. We sat down with Hope on the tram and headed to the rehearsal.
A young man stood in the tram, gazing out of the window. His pale complexion and jet black hair made an eye-catching contrast, and he had a tall stature and strong shoulders. His dark nipples and soft, curly chest hair were visible through the blue knitted shirt he wore, making him quite attractive. He looked up and around, his eyes a brilliant sky blue color. "Stop gawking at him," Natalie whispered in my ear. "You're embarrassing yourself." We entered a small concert hall, and I was introduced to the 3 young members of the instrumental band as a singer and accordion player. The 4th guy, a drum player, hadn't arrived yet. I was confident that my singing would impress them, but I was also uncomfortable due to my appearance. I had no makeup on, my hair was tied in a simple knot with a rubber band, and I wore a comfortable but unattractive dress. Natalie and I sat in the audience seats, watching the instrumental band practice their songs, as Natalie whispered in my ear. "The guitar player is the band leader. His name is Alex, and he is married. His wife, Tina, is 11 years younger than him. Do you remember my coworker Lydia?" "Yes." "Why?" "He was her lover last year. If he doesn't take Tina on the trip, Lydia will come with us. So, don't even think about him. He is occupied." Natalie glanced at me. "Why aren't you wearing makeup today?" "I didn't plan to meet guys here," I said with regret. "You have to be ready to meet guys all the time. Look at me. I'm always ready." "Oh, yeah, you are." I laughed. She was right. She always looked attractive and neat, with a cute smile, as if saying, "Try me. Though, I don't promise you anything." "How do you know all these details?" I was curious. "It's my job. The university pays for the trip, so I have to know everything about them." Suddenly, the door opened and the 4th member of the band came in. "Oh my God," Natalie whispered. "I want him, Natalie." I whispered back. It was the same guy with the blue netted shirt we saw in the tram. "I can't believe it," she replied. "Believe it or not, he is here and I want him. He is so hot." "Yes, he's cute. His name is Yuri. But he is divorced, has a child, and is good for fun only. He's not for you. Please, Natalie. Don't spoil the surprise." "What do you mean, not for me? I want to have some fun." I protested, laughing. First, you have to do your hair and then have fun, she scolded me again. The bass guitar player's name is Sergey. He is kind of cute, but he doesn't seem interesting to me. What do you think? Natalie quickly changed the subject. Yes, I agreed, but I don't want to hear about anyone else. I want Yuri. I insisted, though Natalie ignored my comment. Well, today even this guy is too good for you, she teased. Stop teasing me, I said with irritation. Okay. Pay attention to the keyboard player. I think he is someone you need. His name is Derek. He is the same age as you, a Jew, and single. He has a college degree. His mother is a teacher and his father is a professor, Natalie whispered into my ear, as if reading instructions. If I didn't want you to be my daughter-in-law, I would strongly recommend you check this guy out. But he doesn't wear a blue shirt and doesn't show his sexy, hairy chest, I chuckled. You are such a fool. It's not a blue shirt and hairy chest that's important in men. Really? I thought it was. I laughed. I'm trying to be serious with you and everything is a joke to you, Missy. You might play with his dick for some time, but later you would need him to have a brain, so you could talk to him too. She glanced at me again. And you look like hell. Oh, I know. I nodded in annoyance. Though I listened to every word she said, and if she said this guy was good for me, he must have been. After we had departed, the guys discussed the new girls they planned to spend a month with. Helen is really beautiful, Derek exclaimed. Yeah, she's smokin' hot, Alex agreed. Too bad I'm taking my wife with me. I think she's too young for this, Yuri said thoughtfully. But if we get back to the performance topic, I think Susan is pretty cool. Yeah, she sings really well, Alex said. What does that have to do with anything? Derek objected. She's out of the question. We don't need an accordion player. Hey, don't be so quick to judge her, Alex said. I've heard really good things about her. She's the best performer in the vocal group. Derek didn't reply but scowled in annoyance. Plus, it's not up to us to decide if she comes or not. The university is sponsoring this trip, so if you don't like her, all you can do is stay home. She's coming with us no matter what, Alex explained. Yuri laughed. I knew that, but I didn't even have to try to get them to invite me. I was on the same tram as Natalie and Sue earlier. I was late because I had to drop something off at my ex-wife's house. When I got on the tram, Sue stared at me with such admiration, her gaze locked on me without blinking. I had the feeling that if I gave her a sign, she would follow me like in a trance. So, Derek, it looks like I'm already invited to the trip. Yuri chuckled. On the day of our departure, I spent some extra time in front of the mirror getting ready. I wanted to look my best to make up for my latest setback. I hoped to make a good impression on Derek. We met at the train station, and he gave me a surprised look. But it quickly became apparent that he had no interest in me. Instead, he was flirting with Helen. Although I felt a little jealous, I chose not to be upset since I was soon going to Israel and a love affair would make no difference. Our group consisted of 10 people, including 4 instrumentalists, 2 singers, and a dancer. Alex had brought his wife, Tina, and Lydia had come along too. The train journeyed north all night, and in the morning, we arrived in Moscow. Everyone was elated to have the entire day to shop in such a beautiful city. Shopping in Moscow was always luxurious, but I was not particularly excited because I didn't have money to spend. To pass the time, I decided to visit a friend of mine who lived in the city. His name was Sam. I had met him a couple of months earlier at one of my friend's weddings. There were a lot of people there, including officers of various ranks. Sam wasn't the most attractive guy there, nor the youngest. I flirted with 2 officers before eventually making out with one of them for around an hour. Then, the bride came up to me and whispered in my ear, "He's married." I was taken aback and returned to the party. Sam asked me to dance with him and told me about his feelings. Although I wasn't interested due to being in a bad mood, the bride came over again and whispered in my ear, "He's single and has lots of money. Plus, he really likes you." This made me feel better. It seemed like Sam had fallen in love with me instantly. I spent the night sleeping on a couch at the bride's house, and the next morning, Sam came to me with a bouquet of flowers. "Marry me," he said. "I'll make your life more beautiful than these flowers." I was flattered. "I promise you'll always be my queen. Your life will be full of pleasure. You won't have to work for a living, you'll do whatever you want and travel wherever you want." I was thrilled. "I know I'm much older, but you don't have to love me too much, just enough to stay with me. I promise I'll make you love me eventually. Marry me, make me happy, make yourself happy. I love you. I've never loved anyone as much as I love you. Marry me." He was a good man, kind and generous with a good job and money, and I liked him. However, his marriage proposal sounded more like a business proposal. There was no passion or spark, just a calculation of what I would gain if I married him. I would gain a lot, but I was not in love with him. He was 16 years older, and I felt the age gap. I was too young and attractive compared to him. I wished he had been younger, then maybe I would have felt some passion for him. But if he had been younger, he wouldn't have offered me a prosperous life. "I need to think it over," was my response. I didn't have the courage to reject his proposal. He left for Moscow, where he lived, and I went home. I didn't have a romantic relationship, so I would often call Sam to chat and joke around, not taking into account his more serious intentions. But in a few days, I found myself in a bad mood, feeling lonely and thinking of him with regret. Why is he so old? I thought to myself, and then dialed his number. He picked up the phone sounding sleepy, to which I exclaimed, "I want you here," without any preamble. "Now?" he asked, surprised. "No, let's wait until next Christmas," I said in a playful manner. "I'll come on the first plane," he replied. On my way to the airport, I stopped by my friend's house. She had a 9-month-old baby and was quite busy. I offered to take her baby outside for a few hours so she could do her housework, to which she gratefully accepted. I then headed to the airport with the baby in tow. As I watched Sam walk down the hall, looking for me, his eyes passed me by since he wasn't expecting to see a woman with a child. "Sam." I called out. When he saw me and the baby, his eyes widened and his jaw dropped. He wanted to give me a hug, but the baby was in the way. "Hi baby," he said to the baby, admiring the resemblance between us. "He looks so much like you." My friend was of Asian descent, so of course the baby and I didn't look alike. He stared at me in confusion. "This is my friend's baby," I chuckled. "Don't worry. I don't. I love you for everything you are and everything you have," he replied. On our way back home, I dropped the baby off at my friend's house and asked her opinion on my boyfriend. "He is bold and a little old, but looks good," she whispered in my ear. I appreciated her effort in trying to reassure me, and I smiled in gratitude. Sam brought a large number of gifts for me and my parents. I was astounded by his ability to come up with so many gifts in such a short period of time. It felt like all those presents were there just waiting for me to invite them in. Sam was a kind-hearted, thoughtful, and hospitable person. However, I could see my mother trying to hide her emotions, and I knew why. "Mom. Do you like him? Do you?" she asked me back. "Yes, I do. He is a good man, isn't he?" I'm not questioning his character. I'm asking you, do you love him, baby? "No," I said plainly. "I don't." "So why did you bring him here?" "I don't know. He looks like your father." "Don't you see?" "Yes, I do. I'm not going to marry him, Mama." "Don't worry." I was feeling a bit down. Sam left the next day. "Marry me," he said at the airport once more. "If you do, I promise you that you'll never work. You'll have a wonderful, worry-free, and joyous life." He was being truthful, yet it seemed so odd. I'll call you, I said, as my desire for wealth fought my sense of morality. I'll wait for you forever, he said, kissing me. Goodbye. Having nothing to do in Moscow, I decided to visit Sam. He was very pleased to see me at his doorstep and was hoping that I would stay with him for the rest of my life. We spent the entire day together, and Sam tried to impress me with all the fancy things he had in his house. Little did he know about my personality. I could have been envious of not having all these fancy things, but I never based my decisions on envy. Sam was very disheartened to learn that I didn't intend to stay with him long term, and he was even more disappointed when he saw the young guys from our band at the train station. I gave Sam a goodbye kiss and saw Derek gazing at me. Oh my gosh, Derek thought. How can she be with such an old man? She isn't as unattractive as I had initially thought. Actually, she's quite attractive. His jealousy was evident. The train began to move north. I shared a cabin with Helen, a beautiful young lady with a great sense of fashion who effortlessly drew male attention. No surprise that he's flirting with her. I thought enviously. I was 5 years older than Helen and often bossed her around a little, although she never seemed to mind. It was bedtime, and Helen opened her suitcase to get her sleepwear. I couldn't help but notice the mess inside: clothes, shoes, cosmetics, and money all jumbled together in a pile. Why do you keep your money like this? I asked her in a motherly tone. Money can be stolen or lost. You have to keep it closer to your body. Okay, she replied simply, gathering the money up and organizing it into one pack. I'll put it in my bra. That's a good idea, I continued, mimicking my mother. She went into the bathroom and came back a couple of minutes later. Thanks for the advice, Sue, she said. Sure, I replied. Suddenly, she cried out, oh my God. Where did I put it? What's that? My money. You said you put it in your bra. Yes, I thought so too, but it's not here. Helen ran to the bathroom and began knocking on the door. Excuse me, please, she shouted. I forgot my money on the shelf. Please, open the door. She knocked on the door very hard, but there was no answer. I ran after her. What are you doing, Helen? Oh, Sue, she sobbed, tears streaming down her cheeks. I put my money on the shelf in the bathroom and forgot to put it in my bra. How much money did you have? I asked, shocked at Helen's answer of 800 rubles. That was a lot of money, equal to my 6-month salary. I remember the lady who came into the bathroom right after me. Sue, she doesn't want to open the door, Helen cried, knocking on the door again. Please, open the door. Helen, calm down. Let her finish first. Take it easy. We can wait for her to come out. We waited, and soon the door opened, and a lady emerged from the bathroom and headed to her compartment, not looking at us. Helen rushed into the bathroom, while I ran after the lady. Excuse me, please, I called, following her. Did you see a pack of money on the shelf in the bathroom? No, I didn't. She replied curtly, still avoiding looking into my face. The money was there when you entered the bathroom. Now it's gone, I said firmly. I didn't see any money. She glared at me with anger. Leave me alone. I realized that the money was gone and returned to Helen. She searched everywhere in the bathroom, but the space was small and the search ended quickly. Of course, there was no money. She said that she didn't see any money, and she was very angry with me for asking her. I don't know what to do, Sue. Helen was crying. We should call the police. In a matter of minutes, everyone on the train had heard of Helen's missing money, and they all began frantically searching their luggage, fearful of potential theft. At the next station, several militia officers boarded the train, visibly upset by the incident and with no intention to put in much effort to solve this matter. They examined the bathroom and asked the woman, who denied the accusation, before departing. We continued our journey northward. Helen was teary-eyed, but eventually fell asleep. This amazed me. She had lost a huge amount of money, yet she could still sleep, whereas I felt guilty and could not close my eyes. Had I not advised her to hide her money, it would have been in her suitcase, with her clothes and cosmetics. I thought about Derek's reaction, his disappointment and shock at Helen's foolishness. Maybe I should try again? I thought, though I was aware that I wasn't the kind of person men were attracted to. I thought of Julia, a girl from my vocal group. The summer before, when we had gone on a trip together, I had watched in admiration as she flirted effortlessly with men. She wasn't particularly attractive, yet she had them all captivated. I wondered how she did it. She spoke and moved her body in such a feminine, confident way that it was impossible for anyone to pass her by without noticing. I can do it. I told myself. It's not rocket science. I started to emulate Julia, and soon her spirit was inside me. I replicated her voice intonations and body language, flirting with my eyes and lips the same way she did. Most importantly, when I began to act like Julia, I felt incredibly empowered, as if the whole universe was at my feet. To my amazement, it worked miracles. I only wished these qualities were truly my own. The following morning, we arrived in Arkhangelsk and took up residence in 2 large cabins aboard the ship Northern, which was docked alongside the North Dwina River. We were to perform our first concert on the harbor plaza to an audience of around 3,000 people. When we arrived, a professional jazz band was already playing on a wooden stage in the center of the plaza, but the crowd was not paying attention. Derek was incredibly nervous. I've never performed for such a big crowd before, he said with a trembling voice. If they don't listen to these guys, how are we supposed to make an impression? They're much better than us. I smiled, trying to mimic Julia's movements as I shrugged my shoulders. This band isn't right for this audience, I said. I had performed for large crowds before, so I knew how to grab people's attention. Don't worry, Derek. I moved closer and whispered into his ear, fluttering my eyelashes. You'll see, everything will be just fine. I promise. He smiled, reassured. I believe you. I already knew he was mine, but something was missing. What was it? Thoughts raced through my mind. A touch. Julia would touch him, confidently and with femininity. I would never do this, but right now I was playing the role of Julia. I placed my palm on his shoulder, squeezed it gently, and ran it along his back. Good. I almost whispered, adopting Julia's seductive manner. I felt a jolt of electricity surge through me, and I could tell he felt it too. He was mine. I spun around, moving my hands and shoulders in a way Julia would, and walked towards the stage, with the rest of the band following me. I was always good on stage, I was always the best. I could make people laugh, cry, love, and hate, just by performing. I remembered, last year a guy from the audience declared his undying love for me after a show. He ran backstage to propose. And now I wished Derek would do the same. I didn't need Julia's help anymore, so I stepped onto the stage as myself. Derek stood behind me, playing the keyboard, watching me intently. As soon as I started singing, the entire crowd turned to look at me. Of course they did, because it wasn't fancy jazz, it was a folk song they all loved. My strong, ringing voice filled the harbor air with a familiar sound. Thousands of eyes shone as the expressions on people's faces changed with emotion, reflecting my song and sending exhilaration through my body. I encouraged them with a gesture, and the whole plaza sang along with me, replacing the hush of the harbor with the sound of my song. I danced, and the entire plaza moved like ocean waves, following my body and hands. Their souls belonged to me, and I knew that my song resonated in Derek's heart with a sound of love. He was mine. As soon as I stepped off the stage, I reverted back to Julia, and it worked like a charm. Good job, Sue. Natalie whispered in my ear. It's a good thing you spent all of last summer getting to know Julia. You bet I did. I laughed. That night, we all went to a nightclub where the jazz band was performing. I sat with Derek and Yuri, ensuring the attention was on Yuri, just like Julia would have done. Derek was getting jealous and eventually asked me to dance. As we moved slowly and closely, I felt his warm breath on my neck. Sue, I've never met a girl like you in my life, he whispered. Of course you haven't. I thought. I was on the verge of giving up and just being myself, but I decided to continue playing the role of Julia, giving flirty glances to other guys from time to time. Derek was falling for me, becoming more excited and anxious by the moment. I think I was too successful, because he drank too much and suddenly disappeared into the bathroom, not reappearing until the end of the night. I was surprised and upset. He had left without a word. I didn't know what to think and my confidence was shattered. But Julia was still there to help me. I was invited to dance by other guys, which made me feel better. Yet, I still wanted Derek. I had started to fall for him, too.
Arkhangelsk City was surrounded
by vast forests that had been mercilessly chopped down for timber. The North Tvina River ran through these forests, used to float timber downstream, each log convoy accompanied by small boats. The Northern was a service ship that traveled upstream, mooring the boats and providing them with food, goods, and entertainment, our mission. We usually performed 2 to 3 concerts a day, with audiences ranging from 2 to 10 people. The Northern's crew consisted of a captain, 10 young sailors, an indeterminate-aged lady cook named Shura, and a man introduced to us as a designer. In reality, he was a secret KGB agent assigned to keep an eye on us and prevent any anti-Soviet behavior during our concerts. He trailed us everywhere, silently and steadfastly, and we behaved accordingly, with no intention of spreading anti-Soviet messages. Mornings on the Northern were beautiful, the air crisp and clear. Entering the dining room, I noticed Yuri with Shura bustling around him. I sat next to him, flashing a Julia smile, but he didn't react as I expected. What happened to Julia? I wondered. I've never seen her fail. Natalie gave me an inquisitive look, trying to get my attention. With little interest in what she had to say, as I awaited Derek, she gestured for me to come closer. Reluctantly leaving Yuri's side, I moved to sit beside her. I told you. I told you, she whispered excitedly. Told me what? That Yuri is just for fun. Look at Shura. She's glowing. So? I still didn't quite grasp her point. He spent the night with her. What? It was a shock. Yup. I hope he stays with her for the rest of the trip. Her cooking is phenomenal. Try it, it's delicious. I can't eat, I replied. Why not? I don't know. Oh, I know why. But he doesn't wear a blue shirt and doesn't have a hairy chest, she joked. Oh, shut up, Natalie. Just then, Derek entered the dining room, spotted me, and headed my way. Natalie, disappear. I whispered urgently. Sure. She vanished in an instant. Susan, I'm so sorry about yesterday. I wasn't feeling well and had to leave without you. I know it was wrong, and I'm really sorry, he apologized, his eyes full of regret. I tried to pull off an offended Julia face, taking a moment to think of what to say. But in the end, forgiveness was the only option. Okay, I sighed. I forgive you. Do you mind if I sit next to you? He asked, approaching with an apologetic tone. Of course not, I replied as he settled beside me. We rehearsed songs all day, and strangely, I grew increasingly tired and sleepy despite the high sun. It was a new sensation for me, and the day felt interminable. I struggled to stay awake, but my eyelids wouldn't cooperate. What time is it? I asked Natalie, hoping the day would soon end. It's 2 a.m, she replied with a yawn. How is that possible? I was astonished, the drowsiness momentarily forgotten. You forgot we're near the North Pole, and it's early July, she explained. Oh, right. It's the time of the midnight sun, I said in awe. Whether it's amazing or not, I'm tired of waiting for everyone to finish. I'm going to bed, Natalie declared. I'll join you. I don't think anyone realizes it's nighttime already, I said. Guys. It's 2 a.m. Time to hit the hay. Natalie announced, and within moments, the stage was deserted. When I finally lay in bed, the sunlight streaming into my eyes made falling asleep a challenge, banishing my sleepiness away. The second day on the Northern began with our first concert on board. Since we no longer needed to rehearse, we had plenty of free time between performances, and I spent it all with Derek. Usually, I felt excited before and during my performances. But this time, my excitement stemmed from my growing connection with Derek, overshadowing any anticipation for the concert. We talked, but I sensed tension between us, and I knew exactly why. It was the ethnic divide that often lingered between Jews and non-Jews. People never assumed I was Jewish, and I suspected Derek felt the same. Natalie mentioned that you're Jewish, I brought up. Yes, I am, he replied, his face paling. I could sense his unease. Does that matter? He seemed on the verge of turning away. Yes, it does, because I'm Jewish too. You are? His mood shifted, no longer inclined to walk away. My goodness, I had no idea. I thought you were Ukrainian. I know. Does it make a difference? I asked him with curiosity. Oh, it certainly does. The tension dissipated instantly, and from that moment on, it felt like we had known each other forever. The world around us faded, leaving just the two of us. I confided in Derek about my family's plans to emigrate, and to my delight, he shared the same dream. I was thrilled, not realizing that all Jews harbored similar aspirations. The difference lay in who took action. Are you planning to emigrate soon? I inquired. We haven't set any plans yet, but we will. I'm certain of it, he affirmed. Do your parents also want to emigrate? I probed further. Absolutely. My father listens to me, so I'm confident I can persuade him to join me, Derek replied confidently. I was ecstatic. This was a dream I had long cherished but never imagined discussing so openly. Though my family intended to move to Israel, I had promised them to avoid entanglements with men. Yet, here I was, falling in love with the very person who planned to accompany me. That night, under the starlit sky with the northern moored at a quiet pier, we stood hand in hand, listening to the laughter and clinking of glasses from the ongoing crew and band celebrations. Derek gazed at me with adoration, his smile radiant enough to illuminate the world. I was trembling. Susan, I've never felt this way about anyone before, he confessed. You're the first person I've truly loved. He kissed me tenderly on the lips. These were words I had heard many times, but the sincerity in Derek's voice set them apart. In Russia, men often exploited women eager for love, but Derek wasn't like them. His eyes held respect and kindness, and his touch was gentle and affectionate, filling my heart and soul. The next morning, when I opened my cabin door, Derek was already waiting for me. We spent the entire day together, cherishing every moment alone. Even the crew and band teased us, but our love was strong, and we paid no heed. I knew I had found something special in Derek, and I eagerly awaited what the future held for us. When bedtime arrived, Derek kissed me goodnight, and as I descended to my cabin, the women on board bombarded me with questions, teasing me good-naturedly as they noticed the glow in my eyes. I was in love and loved in return, and my radiant happiness brought joy to everyone around me. Why don't you two get married? Natalie asked abruptly. What do you mean, why? He hasn't asked me. That's why. I replied. So, you have to ask him, then. What are you talking about? Are you serious? How can I ask him to marry me? With your voice, she chuckled. Oh, Natalie, you know I would never do that. Why not? Julia would do it. You've played her part perfectly up to now, so keep going. I don't know about this. I don't think I have the courage for it. All right, do you want me to do it for you? How could you do that for me? I'll figure out a way. If you want me to do it, I will. Oh. I don't know. Okay, I guess, I agreed hesitantly. Everyone was asleep, but I was too excited to close my eyes. I got up from my bed and went outside. The dark orange sun hung on the horizon over the purple forest, coloring the sky with a deep peach tone that turned into a dark red umbrella, sparkling with millions of dim stars on the other side. The stars reflected in the beautiful, lustrous river and were engulfed by the light, ashen fog that rose to meet the forest. The northern floated in the dusky, silent night, providing a perfect conclusion to the beauty of nature. The gentle, whispery breeze lightly kissed my face and lifted my scarf, giving me the feeling that the northern was going to spread her wings and carry me over the forest in celebration of my love. The next day, Derek and I were sitting on the deck, talking and kissing as usual when Natalie came and sat next to us. "Guys, why don't you get married?" she said. "You're just kissing and kissing. I think you can do better than this." Natalie's words felt like a shock, and I wished they could disappear into thin air. An awkward silence followed until Derek spoke up. "I don't mind," he said, smiling at me. "Do you?" Okay, I managed to say. "All right," Natalie exclaimed. "Tomorrow, we'll be in town, and you'll register your marriage." Everything happened so quickly that I had no time to react before it was already done. That night, Derek spoke to Yuri, an older friend of his, seeking advice. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing by marrying Susan?" he asked, although he had already made his decision. "Nobody can tell you what to do, it's your decision," Yuri replied. "But I think Susan is not exactly what you might think. She's in love with you, and she's trying very hard to have you. She's a good girl, but she's much tougher than she lets on. She has a strong personality, and in her family, she will be the boss. So, if you're ready to live under her thumb, go for it." Derek laughed. "Thanks, buddy," he said. All the girls were excited about what happened to me and looked forward to the event. I knew that nobody would tell me to do otherwise. However, I didn't feel at ease. I had promised my parents I wouldn't date guys, and now I found myself marrying a man without their blessing. I reasoned that since he had promised to go with us, I had no reason to reject his proposal. I smiled inwardly, knowing it wasn't his proposal, but mine. Besides, if for some reason it doesn't work out, I can always get a divorce, I tried to comfort myself. I also had another problem and needed advice or an opinion. I pulled Natalie aside in our cabin and whispered in her ear, "Natalie, I don't know what to do. Can you help me?" "What is it?" "You know that I'm not a virgin." "So what?" "That's not a big deal." "No. You don't understand. He is a virgin, and I'm afraid that when he finds out I'm not, he will reject me." "How do you know he's a virgin?" "He told me he's never loved a girl in his life and that I'm the first girl he loves." "You are silly. It's not necessary to love a girl to have sex with her." "I don't think he's a virgin." Lydia came closer and overheard part of our conversation. "Sue. Don't worry about it. Take a lemon, put it inside your vagina, and he won't have a clue that you are not a virgin. A lemon can shrink it." "Are you kidding me?" I laughed. "No. I'm not. Trust me, this is a proven method. I tested it myself. You can even cut your finger to stain the sheet with blood if you want." Lydia smiled, very satisfied with her advice. "No. Don't do it." Natalie disagreed. "Tell him the truth. Talk to him. If he doesn't want you because you had prior relationships with a man, he is not worth it, and you don't want him. Just trust me. Why risk it? He's an attractive guy. I'm telling you, use a lemon." Lydia didn't give up. "No. Don't start your marriage with a lie. If you lie to him now, sooner or later he'll find out the truth, and he'll be disappointed that you lied to him. A lemon and a cut finger." Lydia insisted with a smile. "Go away. Don't listen to her, Sue. Talk to him. A lemon and a cut finger." Though I didn't have a chance to talk to Derek about the problem that bothered me so much. The next morning, we had only a 4-hour break before the next concert, and our entire band had to leave the Northern to go to town for our marriage registration. We located the municipal building without difficulty and knocked on the door with the sign, "A Marriage, Birth, and Death Division." "We would like to register the marriage of this young couple," Natalie spoke to the receptionist. "Did they fill out an application?" the woman asked, not raising her eyes at us. "No, they didn't, but they couldn't do that because, Natalie tried to explain but was interrupted by the lady. By the law of the USSR, they have to fill out an application first, then wait for 2 months, and then get married, she said in a monotone voice, separating every word with a boring pause, not bothering to look at us. She placed an application form in front of her, indicating with a gesture that we had to leave. But, comrade, you don't understand, Natalie attempted again. These young people have fallen in love so deeply that they can't wait for 2 months. They won't be here in 2 months because they live in another city. Please, could you make an exception? By the law of the USSR, the marriage has to be registered only in the city they live in, the woman replied in the same manner, taking the application form off the table. Please. This is an extraordinary case. Natalie persisted. I know these young people very well. I know they are very serious. They don't need to wait. Comrade, I am very busy. You are wasting your time and mine, the woman interrupted Natalie again, glancing at her for the first time, and we realized that we had to leave. We were filled with sadness. If I don't marry him now, my parents will talk me out of it because it would cause a lot of additional paperwork in the emigration process, I thought. If I don't marry her now, my father will never let me marry her. He wouldn't go to Israel. Also, her parents probably wouldn't let her stay with me, Derek thought. Everyone looked at us, having no idea about our thoughts and problems, though Natalie understood it all. Don't be disheartened, she encouraged us. Let's pretend that you are married. Let's go to a restaurant to celebrate your marriage. We had nothing else to do and headed to a restaurant. We were eating and talking about the ridiculous rules when suddenly the KGB guy entered the restaurant. What are you doing here? He asked us with a smile, trying to make us believe that he was there by chance, although we knew it wasn't a coincidence. He had been following us the entire time. We tried to get this couple married, but the lady from the marriage, birth, and death division didn't want to do us a favor, Natalie explained. Really? The KGB guy smiled at Natalie. Yes. She said it's against the law. So, the only thing we could do now is to have a good meal, she concluded. Oh. You should have asked me. I can help, he responded and suddenly became our best friend. Can you? We all questioned in unison. Of course, he beamed. There's no law we can't get around. Tomorrow we'll be in Kotlas for a couple of hours. The governor of the town is my best friend. There won't be any problem. That's wonderful. Natalie said, fluttering her eyes. Thank you very much. She smiled at him wider than she usually did. You're very welcome. Enjoy your meal, he replied, returning her smile. Would you like to join us? Natalie lightly gripped his hand. Sure. The KGB guy sat down next to Natalie, and she flirted with him for the rest of the evening. We returned to the northern, and everyone headed to their cabins except us. I had been debating the best way to address the issue that bothered me and had decided that talking to Derek was the only option. Derek, you told me that you've never loved a girl before and that I'm your first love. Yes, you are. He took my hands and gently kissed them. I hesitated, feeling nervous. Please, just let me speak. Okay? I need to tell you something. He let go of my hands and looked at me with concern. Unfortunately, you're not the first guy in my life. I've been in a relationship before, I said, my speech faltering and my face paling. Oh. I have too. I've been with other women before, but I never loved them, Derek said simply. I hope this person isn't in your life anymore. Oh, no, he isn't. Then it doesn't bother me at all. That was a relief, and I was thankful that I followed Natalie's advice. The morning of the wedding began with preparations. The girls fussed around me, doing my hair and makeup. I wanted to wear the same blue dress I wore the day before, but they insisted I wear a different one for luck. So, I ended up in a black dress with red and yellow flowers. There was so much commotion that I didn't even realize Natalie wasn't with me. When we arrived in Kotlas, we were told the Northern would only stay there for 3 hours. Alex, Tina, Lydia, Derek, and I were ready to leave the ship, but there was no sign of Natalie. She's not feeling well, explained Lydia. We disembarked from the ship, and as I turned around, I saw Natalie on the deck, tears streaming down her face. I waved goodbye to her, understanding why she hadn't come with us. It became clear that she was both pleased that she had helped me find the right match and heartbroken that it wasn't her son. When we finally reached the marriage division, we were out of breath. But the staff were already expecting us and greeted us warmly. Alex and Tina tried to get the camera to work properly, while Lydia collected clover from the side of the road. Susan, what's your last name? Derek asked as he filled out the application form the receptionist had given us. Marshak, I said, smiling. It seemed funny that I was about to marry a guy who didn't even know my last name. But it didn't matter. Derek didn't see me smiling, he was focused on the application form. When is your birthday? He asked again, and I answered. Oh. We are the same age, he said, raising his eyes at me, realizing the humor in the situation. He signed the application. Okay. We are ready. Derek, I asked, my pen hovering midair as I prepared to sign the marriage application, you promised me we were going to Israel, didn't you? His eyes avoided mine as he replied, I didn't promise you anything, Susan. Now I knew he was just talking and dreaming about emigration, with no intention of actually following through.
I stood frozen in thought. It became crystal clear to me that emigration went against my dream of getting married. I thought about the promise I made to my parents to stay away from any romantic relationships. I knew that my marriage would significantly affect my parents' lives. I also thought about my health issue and the recent advice from the gynecologist, who said, you need to get pregnant as soon as possible if you want to have children. But I'm not even married. Marriage doesn't matter when it comes to you and your child, whom you may never be able to have. You don't need to be married to get pregnant. Just find someone. Trust me, there will be takers, said the doctor. For me, this was a harsh sentence, and I was in despair. But suddenly, I found someone with whom I felt good, and who felt good with me. We are in the registry office, and all I need to do is sign the form. Not only will I avoid the necessity of finding a random person, but I will live a dignified and happy life with someone I love. I feel awkward in front of my parents, but I need to arrange my life first, and emigration can wait. My heart was pounding. Maybe I'm wrong? I don't even know him well. He promised me, but now he is going back on his word. But on the other hand, I wasn't honest with him either. He's in love with Yulia, not me. I seduced him to be with him. And he lied to be with me. Yes, we are two of a kind. If I don't marry him now, I will likely lose him forever and may never get married or have children. Who needs a barren woman? But if I marry him and something goes wrong, I can always divorce him. Everyone was waiting impatiently and looking at me in bewilderment. I took the pen from Derek's hand and signed the form. Let's go, I said, taking his hand, and we headed towards the wedding hall. The door swung open, and we entered the wedding hall to the sounds of Mendelssohn's Wedding March. I don't know how Princess Victoria felt in 1858 when this march was first played at a wedding ceremony, but I felt like I was in a heavenly dream. I had never before stood before officials who welcomed and respected me so warmly and familiarly. The registrar greeted us as if we were part of her family. She spoke for a long time, convincingly and emotionally. We listened to her with smiles on our faces and tears in our eyes. We are gathered here today to witness a moment of unprecedented beauty and significance and to feel the warmth of your love, like magic filling the space. Dear Susanna and Derek, the story of your love is a masterpiece woven from threads of passion, laughter, and dreams. Like two stars destined to meet in the expanses of the universe, your souls have found each other, united by the irresistible gravitational pull of love. And now, as you stand before us, ready to embark on this grand adventure called marriage, I cannot help but admire the profound beauty of this moment because I see the reflection of love in your eyes. A love that knows no bounds, defies logic, and transcends time. Today, as you exchange vows, your hearts are filled with love and laughter, and your eyes shine with the anticipation of a shared life journey. But remember, my dear friends, that a successful marriage is not just about finding the right partner but about being the right partner. They say that marriage is much like a cup of good coffee. At first, the coffee is hot and steaming, keeping you awake with excitement and stimulation. But over time, it cools, becoming soothing and essential in your life. And like that cup of coffee, may your marriage be filled with warmth, comfort, and love. Dear Susanna and Derek, may your marriage be filled with moments of pure joy and unrestrained laughter, days spent in the warmth of each other's embrace, and nights illuminated by the radiance of your love. Her emotional speech left a feeling of celebration and warmth in my heart. We didn't exchange rings because we didn't have time or money to buy them, but that didn't bother us. We just kept saying yes to the questions being asked, again and again. Then she announced, "And now I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss your bride." I turned to Derek for a kiss. He smiled at me with his delightful smile. We kissed each other, laughing, as tears streamed down our faces. Sasha, Tanya, and Lita, excited, rushed from their seats to congratulate us. In a burst of emotion, we all bumped heads instead of kissing and hugging. The hall exploded with our laughter. After such a head-on collision, with laughter and tears in our eyes, they hugged and congratulated us, while the registry office staff applauded us. That's how our journey together began. I opened a new page in the story of my life. On the previous page, I wrote, I did, I was. And on this new page, I began to write, we. My husband and I did, we. My husband and I were. It was a truly strange but wonderful feeling. We had little time left before the departure of the Severianen, so we only stopped at a wine shop to buy a few bottles of wine and then rushed back to the ship. As we ran along the pier, waving our bottles of wine and marriage certificate, the ship's crew and members of our band greeted us joyfully, chanting our names from the deck. While we were in town, the ship's cook, Alexandra, had gathered mushrooms in a nearby forest and prepared numerous dishes for the special occasion. The captain ordered all the lights on the Severianen to be turned on, creating a festive atmosphere. The wedding was in full swing, laughter, the sound of glasses breaking for good luck, cries of Gorgo. A Russian wedding tradition, loud music, strong wine, and delicious snacks. From the shore, it seemed like the Severianen was hosting the party of the century. And for us, it truly was. To commemorate this unique event, the captain recorded our names in the ship's log and allocated us a separate cabin. For the rest of the journey, we enjoyed each other's company, spending an incredible and unforgettable honeymoon, which was quite unusual in the former Soviet Union. The month flew by quickly, and soon we were on our way home. Our parents didn't yet know about our marriage, and we were very nervous. At the station, I intended to say goodbye to Derek and go home to my parents, but Derek didn't let me go. "You are my wife, and you will live with me," he said and took me to his home. His parents were on vacation, so I had time to settle in and think about how to break the news of my marriage to my parents. I couldn't come to a decision and asked Nadia for help. She called my mother and talked to her for an hour, trying to prepare her for the unexpected news. Then she called me and said that my parents knew everything. Only God knew what happened in my mother's heart when Derek and I appeared at the door of my parents' apartment. Mom scolded me a little, but it wasn't as bad as I had expected. However, later my mother was taken to the hospital with a heart attack. The next day, Derek's parents returned home from vacation. They welcomed me into the family with open arms, though only God knows what they really felt. I thought Derek would talk to his parents about emigration, but he was nervous and avoided the topic. Soon I realized that his boasting about his word being law in the family was just childish talk to impress me. The reality was that there was only one boss in his family, his father. Well, if the mountain won't come to Mohammed, then Mohammed must go to the mountain. My parents came to meet my in-laws to introduce themselves and clarify the situation. They had already burned all bridges, sold their apartment, quit their jobs, and submitted documents to the immigration office. They expected to get permission to leave the country at any moment. They had no chance to change their plans, so my parents were leaving with or without me. Derek's parents had never thought about emigration and were even afraid to talk about it. We lived in a communist country where people were afraid of their own shadows. The conversation between the parents was brief. They quickly clarified the situation and looked at us reproachfully. We expected that. It was hard, but we loved each other and wanted to be together. And that was the most important thing for us. Colleagues, neighbors, and friends didn't approve of our marriage. Just as quickly as they married, they'll divorce, was a frequent comment we heard from people we knew and didn't know. Not one person was happy for us. But it didn't matter. Life is complicated, and no one knows whether their decision is right or how it will impact their life. Time will tell, and our time has shown that, despite everything, my husband and I have never regretted what we did on that wonderful June day in the town of Kotlas on the Severianen.
What a story. It sounds romantic. I'm impressed, I said dreamily.
The most interesting thing is that a couple of months before this trip, I was invited to a party, added Susanna. There was a young couple who told the story of how they met. I listened and silently envied them. They met at a summer camp where they worked as counselors, fell in love, and got married within 2 months.
Just like normal people in the Soviet Union, I commented. I'm sure they didn't have connections in the KGB to get married sooner, I laughed.
You're right. I wanted a story like that to happen to me. But what happened to me surpassed all my desires and dreams. What happened to me was much more interesting and romantic than the story I envied. I've never met people who got married just 11 days after meeting. Well, except my mom, who got married after 2 weeks, but in terms of time, I'm still the champion.
Thank God you don't regret making such a quick decision. It's good that your parents acted wisely and didn't pressure you.
That wasn't entirely the case, but it could have been much worse. However, I'm stubborn. If I want something, I'll get it one way or another. But they never pushed me toward divorce.
That's good. Many young couples marry or divorce under parental pressure and suffer their whole lives, I said. I know an Indian girl, Zakia. She is extremely unhappy in her marriage. Her parents gave her a choice of a few photos, and she picked her future husband. He looked good in the picture and came from a good family. They met only once, and she was initially thrilled with him, even though she hadn't even spoken to him. They met again at their wedding. Then she moved into his house, and her unhappy life began. Her in-laws' family was very miserable. Her husband's brother had chronic kidney disease. Her father-in-law donated a kidney to his son, and her husband also donated blood and other organs to his brother. The family suffered a lot, and since Zakia lived with them, she actively participated in family affairs. She never complained and was always ready to help, but her new family didn't appreciate it. Her mother-in-law bossed her around and treated her like a servant. Zakia and her husband had well-paid jobs. They were both programmers, but they couldn't save any money because they gave all their money to the in-laws. Whenever Zakia wanted to buy something, she had to ask her mother-in-law for permission and money. If her mother-in-law didn't approve the purchase, there was no money. Then a baby was born, and the mother-in-law took control. Zakia suffered. She couldn't enjoy motherhood because she was constantly watched and ordered around. Then the in-laws decided the young couple should buy a new house. Zakia was happy, dreaming of independence, but the in-laws bought a house next door. Zakia moved, but her life didn't change much. Her mother-in-law continued to control their lives in every aspect. One day, Zakia came to work in tears. When I asked her what was wrong, she replied, "It's nothing serious, I can live with it." Then she explained that she had hired builders to lay the tiles in the kitchen the way she liked, diagonally. But when she returned home, she saw that they had done it exactly as it was in her hated mother-in-law's house. I asked her why she didn't stand up for herself, but she didn't answer. She continued to endure these people all her life, and they constantly made her unhappy. I kept in touch with Zakia for a long time, and every time we met, she would tell me about her life, continuing to complain. She admitted that she didn't understand how she could have liked her husband. At first, she idolized him, but then he became boring and repulsive to her. Then her mother died, and Zakia was inconsolable. Her mother had been her best friend. I asked, "What advice did your mother give you about being unhappy in your marriage and your mother-in-law making your life unbearable?" She replied, "She felt sorry for me, but said that this is how life is supposed to be and nothing can be changed. Why do you live such an unhappy life? You only have one life, there won't be another. We live in America, you are free here. You have the right to do whatever you want and not be dependent on anyone, especially with your salary." I tried to motivate her again, but she never had an answer.
I also knew an Indian woman, Banmala. Susanna smiled ironically. One day we were having lunch together, and she told me something completely awful. She saw a photo of a little boy on her boss's desk and asked, "Why don't you have a photo of your husband on your desk?" The boss replied that she had never been married. Banmala was beside herself at such a scandalous statement. Her eyes almost popped out when she said, "Can you believe it?" She didn't even blush, as if there was nothing shameful about it. I calmly looked at her and stunned her with my reaction, "So what?" I replied, intending to explain my point of view, but Banmala refused to listen to me and never joined our lunch break again. Susanna smiled ironically. "It's funny, but in Russia, many people have the same attitude towards this issue. It's a paradoxical society. On the one hand, it's shameful to have a child without a husband, but on the other hand, marital infidelity is considered an unwritten rule."
Oh, yes. Once, in a conversation, I said that my husband doesn't cheat on me and never will. They laughed at me, saying that such things don't happen. It's a very contradictory society. My parents raised me very strictly, but when I grew up, I often found myself in strange situations for which I wasn't prepared. However, I quickly learned and eventually understood how to act in such situations.